What's going on, guys? Approaching a new year here, and figured I would just freestyle a little bit of a video focusing on this gem of a pile of crap in reality. So I just want to do a video and share with you guys my experience with this car. It is something else. I don't even think it's worth brushing the snow or the ice off, to be honest with you. I don't even think this car is worth its weight in scrap. A couple weeks ago, I was approached by an individual who has a 4-cylinder coupe and he wanted to do a 5-liter conversion, and he was referred to me. Great business for me, right? So he comes over and he says, oh, you know, yeah, I have this parts car that I've bought, so he can do all of the conversion process, and it can arrive next week. So this is the car that showed up. Now, keep in mind, 4-cylinder conversion, so we need a wiring harness that's going to work, that will plug into the engine harness with an ECU. We need our front suspension, our spindles, we need the brake booster. You know, typically you would need fuel lines, which I'm gonna let go because up here it's really hard to find clean fuel lines, so I was just gonna run nylon. But you'd be hopeful that at least your rear end, it'd be in good shape, because you know you need to swap it to an 8.8. And of course you need a motor, you need your drivetrain. So this car that showed up was supposed to be sufficient to do a V8 swap to a 4-cylinder car. I'm gonna show you guys what arrived. So you can see from the outside of this car, just look at this thing. This thing is rotted. Now wait until I pop the hood. And you know what, it doesn't really matter, right? You figure parts car, you really just want to make sure that your running gear is good. But you know, there's a limit and a threshold to everything. Like, I don't even have any coupe quarter glass here that I could potentially refurbish and sell. So, you know, we have some power window motors and wiring and stuff. There's, you know, dash skeleton. Climate controls are there. That's good. You know, the car wasn't auto, but hey, the car didn't come with an automatic transmission. Unfortunately, the guy thought that he could use his one that was in the 4-cylinder, which is a big no. So we don't have that. We don't have a cluster because, you know, we want to tack that red lines for proper 5-liter red lines. So we don't have a cluster, you know. The tack is required if we want the proper red line. You know, if we wanted to upgrade the steering wheel to a proper 5.0 steering wheel, you know, this one's all chewed up. But, you know, some of this stuff wasn't to be expected in the deal for the car. You know, I get it. But when you're hoping to have a nice long block, you think you get a nice pan intake motor, something that was running and driving. You want to know what showed up? Look what showed up. This is what showed up. Like, this is just baffles me. Like, I don't care what kind of compression or how clean the bottom end or even the heads are on this motor. How am I supposed to work with this? You have no fuel rails, you have no injectors, you have no engine harness, you have no accessory brackets, you have no vacuum lines. You know, you got motor mounts that are meh, those are gonna end up getting changed anyways. But you can tell that the guy that supplied this, number one, this part of the motor, minus the valve covers and intakes, maybe this is the motor that was with the car. You know, the pan's actually in pretty good shape considering, like, look at these frame rails. So who knows what's going on here? Clearly the guy who had it, like, look, none of this is bolted down. It's just sitting here. It looks pretty clean in there. This motor, it probably has a lot of potential. Do like the mystery motor cleanup and stuff. If I had the harness, if I had the rails, if I had all the bolts, nuts and hardware that's required to put all this together, it'd be a different story, because it's actually kind of good that some of these parts are loose, because I'd be taking all this off and painting it up and regasking it and doing all those things. It's just really the piss off is not having all of the hardware to put everything back together. And, you know, like I said, all of the harness and everything that's required. So this main car harness that plugs in right here, this guy right here is key on the conversion because they changed over the years, right? So your 87 and 88 cars are, you know, unique, minus California, who in 88 had a mass air meter harness. So the harnesses were unique in 89. Then again, they were unique in 90 when we got airbags that were put into play. So 90, 91, same harness, but then midway through 92 and 93, the fuel pump relay ended up down in here. So that's a different harness. So long story short, you know, the harness has some value here. Sway bar is actually in pretty good shape, and I'm missing lots of sway bars. It seems like every Mustang I've bought this year hasn't had a sway bar, so that's kind of a good thing. I can put a car back together. I am more than able, but when you're trying to be productive and you want to do a swap and have all of your parts there and ready, I'm missing manifold bolts. I'm missing the brackets, the bolts that hold the accessory brackets on. You know, there's no alternator. There's no pollution pump if the guy wants a pollution pump. Struts and shocks, I get it. You know, those are going to be replaced. Brake pads are going to be replaced. But if I showed you the rear end on this thing, it is so scabby and so scaly, and you'd be able to just picture that in your mind based on how rusty these strut towers are. I would spend more time just trying to get the stuff out. You know, I'm probably gonna have to torch the bolts out of the control arms in the back, which means potentially the control arms are no good. Then I need bolts, so on and so forth. Then sandblast the rear end down. You know, there's probably backing plates and things like that that are rotted out. It would just be an amount of time. So unfortunately, this thing really doesn't have much to offer. It has the bay harness, so not the engine harness, but it has the harness that goes in the engine bay that would plug in, and this car was a 91. So doing the swap would be really good because we wouldn't have to worry about any issues when it comes down to the engine harness and everything in the fender wells and going inside the car. Everything would be plug and play. So that's a plus. You know, you probably have a decent motor in here, and you guys are probably like, well, how much did he pay for it? You know, well, I'm not going to get into that. Let's just say too much, in my opinion, you know, because it cost $200 just to get the car here for the ride, because it was about, you know, 150 kilometers, you know, just shy of 100 miles away. So towing is towing. That's the reality. But this is not the type of car that I want to get parts off of to do this swap. So there you go, guys. It's a little bit of a vent. I needed to share this information with you guys, or just get your opinion. Like, what would you guys do if this showed up to your door as a car that you were supposed to get, you know, decent parts for something that's going to be running and driving? Yeah, it just blows my mind. The biggest thing is that motor just sitting in there with all the missing pieces. Like, the guy knew that this guy wanted to do a 4-cylinder, you know, conversion project. You know, he knows he's going to need all this stuff. Why wouldn't you give it? I don't know. It just baffles me. I've been sitting on this one for a week. Like, when it showed up, I was pissed. I was just like, take this pile of shit back, you know, but just had to try and bring myself back down, you know, talk to the customer, manage his expectations, and just, we'll come up with a solution. You know, for every problem, there's a solution. I'll figure it out. You know, it's just part of the business, right? Nothing goes as smooth as you hoped. Nothing goes 100%. But yeah, this is a little bit of a letdown. I got another really good part source. I've already sourced out all the parts I'm going to need, and pretty good prices as well. So I'll be sharing more on that. So take this video as a little bit of a rant, you know, as a little bit of information and an introduction to one of the projects that most likely will be coming up here in the new year, which will be a nice little 4-cylinder to V8 conversion. Really good story about the car, you know, really good owner, and really excited to do it. I just don't want to do that project with the parts that are on this car. So that's it for this one, guys. You know, feel free to comment, share your feedback and everything else. It's just, It's unfortunate. It could have been much easier than this. You know, if the guy hadn't have sourced his own parts car, you know, I would have happily gone on. You know, you can find running and driving 5 liters, you know, that, especially ones that are rotted like this one, you can find them for like $2,000. Drive it home. It's not all half taken apart, missing bolts and everything else, and that I might need. Probably has better running gear. As long as the cars are moving, you're generally in pretty good shape. You know, it's when the cars sit and rot, that's when, you know, things aren't moving and they're a complete pain in the ass to be able to take out of the car. So, you know what, even if don't end up using this guy, find another running and driving car or my other parts hookup. I even got some pretty good parts off Lemon Dropped. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Be sure to stay tuned to see what's going to happen with this thing. Maybe you'll never see it again. I hope I never see it again. But more importantly, we'll get the 91 4-cylinder car in. We'll get all the parts that we need, and we're going to get started on a 4-cylinder to 5.0 V8 swap.